This hour, saying goodbye. Fans and family of Michael Jackson gathering for the final farewells to the King of Pop as Sky News gives two viewers their own moment to remember.
Oh my God! Are you serious?
Oh no!
Also coming up on Afternoon Live, we all won the Cold War. Obama's message to the Russians, but is Putin listening? Virus outbreak, 150 are taken ill on a cruise ship in Scotland. We'll be live at the scene there in a due course up there.
James Adams, Sam Badham and Lee Christopher Harris, Lee Baisden, Phil Baer.
And remembering the
Anna
victims
Brown.
of terror, a new memorial for the 7/7 bombings. Also more unrest in China, a curfew imposed after ethnic tensions lead to riots and arrests.
Live from the Sky News Centre, this is Afternoon Live with Andrew Wilson.
Hello and welcome to Afternoon Live. Our top story today, the long goodbye, a funeral service attended by Michael Jackson's family, will take place later at the Forest Lawn Cemetery in Los Angeles, where the Hollywood legends like Spencer Tracy and Humphrey Bogart are already buried. Fans are also gathering for a memorial concert starring Stevie Wonder in downtown LA. Millions are expected to watch from around the globe. The TMZ Showbiz website is reporting the coffin will go on public display at the concert. Sky's US correspondent Robert Nisbet now reports.
To witness a slice of cultural history, demand was high. Over 1.5 million applied for 17,500 seats. Devoted fans and best friends Cheryl Thomas and Helen Gardner flew to LA from Bridgend on the off chance, but their names weren't picked.
I haven't come all the way to LA to watch it on TV. Have I? I'm going to record it on Sky Plus when I go home.
Well, how would you like to watch it inside the Staples Center?
Oh my God!
Oh my God!
Oh my God! Are you serious?
Oh no!
Oh my God! Oh my God!
That's so sweet!
Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God!
The Sky viewer did win and asked for his tickets to be passed on to deserving recipients.
Can you put it on my hand, please?
Your hands are shaking a little. Look at this. Others who scored the tickets and wristbands were directed to drive-through security checks at several locations, including Dodger Stadium.
You made it! Yeah! I got that! Wow! Thank you very much! Thank you very much!
The delight obvious.
I'm really excited. I didn't think I was gonna get them. It's a madhouse out here, so I'm pretty excited.
I feel like I got the golden ticket. Seriously.
So you have two inside the Staples Center, and you're good to go. Just bear left on your way out. Okay?
Staples Center! Oh my God! So we're gonna be live in all the action! Oh my God!
The public farewell to arguably the world's most famous entertainer will certainly be lavish. Media parked outside the Staples Center in downtown LA will beam the valediction to a global audience, certain to run to hundreds of millions. A few miles away, a quieter, respectful gathering at the Forest Lawn Mortuary and Funeral Home in the Hollywood Hills, where the Jacksons are expected to lay Michael to rest later today. Police guard the perimeter, even asking reporters to watch for fans so consumed by grief they may be contemplating what a spokesman called ritualistic suicide. At LA's Superior Court, they're focusing on the legal complications from such a large and messy estate. This 2002 will valued Jackson's net worth at $500 million. It's estimated to be worth half that today. But the family has now lost its fight to control his business dealings. Now the will's co-executors, lawyer John Branca and music executive John McClane, are the administrators. Their immediate task is to unpick Jackson's complex financial arrangements. The pressure on all the main players is beginning to show.
Do not touch me!
Nobody touched you here.
You just did! Don't!
Are you ready to fight for your children?
Are you ready to get your butt kicked? Don't touch me!
Debbie Rowe, Jackson's ex-wife and the mother of his two eldest children, lashing out when jostled by the paparazzi. She's decided to miss today's event. Her spokesman said she didn't want to be an unnecessary distraction. So today's tribute is unquestionably an important musical landmark. The cast list includes some of the most influential performers in American popular music. After 12 days of conspiracy, investigation and rumour, it's time for fans and family to say goodbye. Robert Nisbet, Sky News, Los Angeles.
And indeed, in that goodbye, famous entertainers including Mariah Carey, Smokey Robinson, Lionel Richie, Stevie Wonder, Usher and the Oscar-winning actress Jennifer Hudson. They'll all be there today. Amongst the friends paying tribute will be actress Brooke Shields, Motown Records founder Berry Gordy, basketball heroes Magic Johnson and Kobe Bryant, human rights campaigner Martin Luther King III, and the Reverend Al Sharpton. The Jackson family, plus Michael's children, will of course join all the well-wishers at the Staples Center following the private funeral service. Not going, Jackson's ex-wife, Debbie Rowe, the mother of his eldest 2 kids, who says she would be what she calls an unnecessary distraction. Also not going, Jackson's longtime friend and Oscar-winning actress Dame Elizabeth Taylor. She's been posting updates on her Twitter page saying she was asked to speak at the Staples Center but cannot be part of what she calls the public hoopla. And perhaps most intriguing from the British perspective is the involvement of 12-year-old Welsh wonder Shaheen Jafar Goli.
Oh, I can't.
Schoolboy shot to fame on this year's Britain's Got Talent, performing a cover of the Jackson 5 hit Who's Loving You. Michael Jackson was said to have become a fan after seeing his performances on YouTube. Well, Cut Sky's Katie Stallard is outside Shaheen's school in Swansea. Katie, what's been the reaction there? This is quite a day.
Yeah, you can keep your Stevie Wonder and your Lionel Richie. As far as they're concerned here, tonight is only about Shaheen from Swansea. They are proud, they're excited, they're a little bit nervous, but they're pretty confident that Shaheen can deal with it. They've known about it at the school, at the senior levels, for about a week now. Shaheen needed permission to be out of school this week, so they had to explain to the head teacher what they wanted to do. As you can see, not a lot of concentration on lessons this afternoon, but I think that can probably be forgiven. So they had to get formal permission. The school were sworn to secrecy. They've had to sit on this for the last week, but now that it's out in the open, they are so proud. I spoke to the headmaster, Rob Phillips, just a short time ago and asked him what it was like to see his young lad up there tonight on the world stage.
Oh, I can't say how proud we are of him. We were proud of him when he was on Britain's Got Talent. We were proud when he was in the final. But this is beyond anybody's wildest dreams, to be centre stage at the greatest celebrity send-off of all time. Global audience of millions. It just, words can't put it, I just can't put it into words.
And Katie, a proud moment for the good people of Swansea as well.
Yeah, they got onto the Shaheen bandwagon during the series of Britain's Got Talent. They got very used to getting behind this little boy and cheering him on, and they are now just so proud to see him going onto the world stage. They think billions could watch this around the world, and they think what better way to launch little Shaheen onto the world. So they are very, very proud. We've been down into the centre of Swansea this afternoon and asking people there what they make of it.
Very proud, especially as he's Welsh. Really, really good. He's only little. I love him for to do something as big as that in front of all those people, so it's really good for him.
I think the experience he's going to have as well, oh marvellous I think, really good.
Oh, well.
Yeah, he does well, yes, really proud of him, we are.
I think that's brilliant. Yeah, someone from our hometown as well, performing on the stage, like, I think that's brilliant. Yeah.
So if he can cope in front of Simon Cowell on the stage, I think he'll be able to cope with most anything.
Katie Stallard, live in Swansea. Thanks very much indeed. Now you can see the official Michael Jackson Memorial Service live here on Sky News and in high definition on Sky Arts HD from 5:30 this evening. And we'll be streaming that on our HD Live on our website as well. That and much more, of course, at skynews.com. And on our website, skynews.com, join the thousands of others leaving messages on our Michael Jackson tribute wall. Scroll over the red squares to read what's already been written. The grey squares are for you to add your own thoughts. Now, other news now. President Obama has reassured Russia that a US missile defense system in Eastern Europe is strictly to protect America from a potential attack from Iran. He delivered a speech to the new economic school in Moscow after meeting the Russian Prime Minister, Vladimir Putin. Yesterday, Obama and President Dmitry Medvedev agreed that the two countries would cut their nuclear stockpiles by up to a third by the end of the year.
Mr. President?
I know Russia opposes the planned configuration for missile defense in Europe. And my administration is reviewing these plans to enhance the security of America, Europe, and the world. And I've made it clear that this system is directed at preventing a potential attack from Iran. It has nothing to do with Russia. In fact, I want to work together with Russia on a missile defense architecture that makes us all safer. But if the threat from Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile programs is eliminated, the driving force for missile defense in Europe will be eliminated, and that is in our mutual interests.
Well, Sky's Foreign Affairs editor Tim Marshall joins us now live from Red Square there outside the Kremlin. Tim, this is a charm offensive. Let's be honest. They may have slender agreements at this stage, but no one can deny there's progress being made.
I think charm offensive is right. It's what pressing the reset button is partially about, and I think it's partially achieved that. I mean, they have agreed to disagree cordially on several issues, notably missile defense, and they have actually agreed one or two concrete things, notably getting the overfly rights to bring American troops into Afghanistan via Russia. And I think right at the very end there, in the soundbite you played, you can clearly see Obama saying to the Russians, I know you're angry about us putting the missiles into Poland, but if you help us stop Iran getting ballistic missiles and putting nuclear weapons on the end of them, should they ever choose to do that, and are able to do that, then there would be no reason to have the missiles in Poland. In other words, that's a real offer of a compromise and a way out of the biggest impasse between them. But he also had a little dig, I think, at Prime Minister Putin, a man who very much believes that Russia is a superpower. He's put Russia back on the map, and that Russia has spheres of influence. Well, in came Mr. Obama today in his speech, and he said, spheres of influence, how very 19th century.
The 20th century view that the United States and Russia are destined to be antagonists, and that a strong Russia or a strong America can only assert themselves in opposition to one another. And there is a 19th century view that we are destined to vie for spheres of influence, and that great powers must forge competing blocks to balance one another. These assumptions are wrong. In 2009, a great power does not show strength by dominating or demonizing other countries.
Kind of awkward language, Tim, because President Obama's advisors will be telling him there is no more sensitive diplomatic adversary than a Russian prime minister or a Russian president.
Very much so. I mean, this is a country with an amazing past, a very dark past as well, of course, during the Stalin years. And a country which takes itself and its place on the world stage very seriously. It's one of the world's biggest country, 11 time zones, and it's also a country, of course, with massive oil and gas reserves. It's a major player in the world, and you have to meet it as on an equal basis. He went out of his way, actually, to talk about the great sacrifices that Russia made in the Second World War, and about what a fantastic place it is, and all the artists and musicians and writers that they had, and that all went down very well. But going down less well is this idea of, you know what, you can't have spheres of influence. Because even as he was speaking, there was a US Predator drone up above Afghanistan which moved across into Pakistan and fired 2 missiles into Pakistan, and it killed about 14 or 15 people, allegedly Taliban. Now, if that's not interfering in another country and not having an influence, and an influence in Pakistan and Afghanistan, I don't know what is. So when he says there are no such things as spheres of influence, he's looking at it very much from an American perspective, and that's fine. What other perspective is he supposed to have? He leads the great world's superpower. But you know, you've got to understand how badly that goes down here, where the Russians say, well, hang on a minute, isn't your sphere of influence at the moment in Iraq? Aren't you trying to influence things in Pakistan? Aren't you also influencing things in Afghanistan? Etc., etc., etc. Aren't you influencing things in Cuba with all the Cuban acts that you have? And so we understand all that, but why are you telling us we don't have a sphere of influence? I think the Russian perspective, from the elite especially, is you seem to want to have it both ways, and that's going to be a sticking point. But I go back to the soundbite. He's made a clear offer to me. Help us stop Iran and we won't need the missile defence shield, and that's the way forward in the coming months and possibly a couple of years.
One thought that occurs to me, Tim, is this idea of a nuclear summit later this year in Washington, to which the Russians, of course, will be invited in a big way to attend, and then a reciprocal summit back in Russia next year. Doesn't that go some way to acknowledging an element of respect from Washington to
Yes.
Moscow?
Yeah, and the Kremlin's loving it. Mr. Putin and Mr. Medvedev are both loving it. I mean, I don't buy into this thing that they're miles apart and there's a power struggle. I think they are in lockstep together, these two. And they do really like that, because then they're back to the days when Russia and America sit down at a table as equals and talk about things, and that's what they want. It's what they've wanted for the last 15 years, but both the Clinton administration and then the Bush administration spent all that time thinking, right, we've only got a limited amount of time here to stick it to Russia for as much as we can, make as many advances as we can for our worldview, which is to promote democracy, human rights, peace and all the rest of it, because we know they are going to come back, and they're back now. They're back on the world stage, and I think they're rather enjoying it. And so it's a good idea to have this summit. It gives them some sort of deadline. December 6th is the deadline to get the New START treaty and to reduce these nuclear weapons, well, to agree to reduce them and to sign on the dotted line by December the 6th. So you could fold that into a big Washington get-together, and you can start celebrating your achievements. And they've made some, and they can make some more, but I just think one or two people have made a bit too much of the resetting and made a bit too much that they're all friends now. They're not. They are rivals on the world stage.
Plenty more work still to be done. Tim, live in Moscow, thanks very much indeed. Coming up in the next few minutes here on Afternoon Live, we'll hear from both captains a day before the start of the Ashes. Plus, more international disappointment for rugby's pin-up boy. OK, but now here's Jane with the rest of the news.
Thanks, Andrew. The police watchdog says planning for the G20 protests was inadequate and that the police risk losing public confidence. Her Majesty's Chief Inspector of Constabulary praised some aspects of the operation, but said they were too focused on tackling violence rather than enabling a peaceful protest. A separate investigation is already underway into the death of Ian Tomlinson, who it's alleged was pushed over by a policeman during the protests. Riot police in China's western region of Xinjiang are battling protesters as ethnic violence intensifies. Hundreds of Han Chinese armed with bats and knives are marching through the city of Urumqi. It follows clashes earlier today between riot police and ethnic Uyghur demonstrators. Authorities have imposed a night curfew. Violence on Sunday left at least 156 people dead and more than 800 injured. A British soldier and 2 Canadian troops have been killed in a helicopter crash in southern Afghanistan. The helicopter went down in southern Zabul province. It's understood that the crash was not caused by enemy fire. The British soldier was from the 2-2 Engineer Regiment Royal Engineers. His family have been informed. The Ministry of Defence has also named the soldier killed in Afghanistan on Sunday. Lance Corporal Dane Elson of 1st Battalion Welsh Guards was killed in an explosion while on patrol in Helmand Province, Afghanistan. That means 175 servicemen and women have now been killed in the country since operations began. Of those, 145 have died in action. A man suspected of killing 5 people in a community in South Carolina has been shot dead by police. Patrick Burris was caught by officers investigating a burglary 30 miles from where the killing started in June. Police said bullets in his gun matched those that killed residents in and around the town of Gaffney. The worst of the recession is over, according to the British Chambers of Commerce. It was the first business organisation to warn of a recession and now says there's been welcome progress in business confidence levels. But it warns that talk of a recovery is still premature. Hundreds of people have risked life and limb in Spain for the annual bull run. 6 fighting bulls were released to chase the runners down the narrow streets of the town over a course of about half a mile. There were 4 injuries, including a Scottish tourist, an American tourist and 2 Spaniards.
Jane, thanks very much indeed. Scotland's Health Secretary Nicola Sturgeon says the suspected outbreak of a vomiting bug on board a cruise ship that's docked in Invergordon is a very concerning situation for people living in the area. Doctors are trying to establish whether or not up to 150 people taken ill on the Marco Polo are suffering from the norovirus. Yesterday, passengers not showing any symptoms were allowed on shore to go sightseeing. The ship's operator says the death of a 74-year-old man who suffered a heart attack on board yesterday is believed to be unrelated to the bug. So what do we know about the norovirus? Well, it's highly contagious. You catch it through contact with an infected person or object, or by consuming contaminated food or drink. It's better known as the winter vomiting bug, as that's when people are most at risk, when their immunity is lower. Symptoms tend to surface between 12 and 48 hours after infection and include sudden nausea, vomiting and diarrhea. Victims usually take around 2 or 3 days to recover, as there is no specific treatment for the illness. And to put the latest outbreak into context, it's estimated that the norovirus affects between 600,000 and 1 million people in the UK every year. Well, Sky's Scotland correspondent Rona Dougal's at the port in Invergordon and Easter Ross. Good to see you, Rona. What's the situation now?
Well, I spoke to one of the passengers on board a short time ago, and he said that he and his wife were feeling fine and had asked if they could leave the boat, but they were told that they weren't allowed to. And he also said that just a short time ago an announcement had been made to say that the decision was going to be made shortly as to whether or not they were going to be quarantined. Now, around 200 people are now suffering symptoms of this suspected outbreak. Overnight and this morning, 4 people were taken to hospital in Inverness. 1 has since been brought back. The others are in a stable condition. Around 800 passengers are on board, and they were on the first leg of a tour around the British Isles. The next stop was supposed to be Orkney and Shetland, but clearly the boat's not going anywhere today. Local GPs and community nurses have gone on to the Marco Polo to help the ship's doctor deal with those passengers suffering from the symptoms. NHS Highland said that tests are underway to try and establish if it is the norovirus that is causing this outbreak.
Well, of course, whenever a ship has a problem and it docks at a local community, the local community is obliged to help out as much as they can, as the people of Invergordon are. But, Rona, are they worried about the contagion of the virus and the fact that some of the passengers have come ashore?
Yes, members of the local community have expressed concern and indeed anger that passengers were allowed to come off the boat yesterday once the outbreak had started to go into the local village and visit the shops and the cafes. They have said that they're concerned that the bug will now spread, but the local authorities say that they're doing everything they can to contain it, and the risk of it spreading within the village is very low indeed.
Presumably some of the passengers who may have intended a trip to go much further, as you were saying, may decide to bail out now and leave the ship and head back to their homes.
At the moment, they don't have that option. The passenger that I spoke to a short time ago, Frank Hart, and his wife do want to leave, but they're told until further notice they have to stay. They are allowed to move around the boat. Those suffering from the symptoms have to stay within their cabins. But Mr. Hart said to me it's a pretty miserable experience so far, and even if they are allowed to leave the boat in the next day or two, they don't think they will continue because the cruise was supposed to finish in a few days anyway.
OK, Rona Dougal, thanks very much indeed. Well, joining us now from on board the ship is one of the passengers, Frank Hart, that Rona was talking about a moment ago. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Hart. How's things going with you?
Well, we're pretty bored. The crew are doing the best they can in the circumstances, but unfortunately we are staying on the ship because it's the opportunity to leave has been denied us. We can't get off the ship now. We're awaiting a decision from the health authorities as to whether the ship will be quarantined. Not sure what that means, but we await that decision.
Are you and your wife, I take it, are not showing any symptoms yet of any problems?
That's right, but with a group of 30-odd people, and a number of those people have actually been taken ill with the apparent virus. We don't know what the virus is. Still await information on that as well.
So what's your estimation of how you're being treated thus far? It does seem as if, in cooperation with the authorities on the shore, that everything is being done to make sure this is dealt with in a reasonable fashion and safe fashion.
I think that there are procedures in position that the ship's management should adopt, and they appear to be adopting those. The frustration for passengers is not knowing what's going on and not being able to go ashore. People have paid a lot of money for this cruise, and they just see it being wasted right now. We are told by rumour that the ship did depart Tilbury in Essex, in south of England, with some knowledge that there was a problem, but that is speculation and rumour, so we don't know whether that's been confirmed.
Okay, Frank Hart, thanks very much indeed for talking to us, and good luck with your prospects the next few days. Let's take you live to California now as the preparations start for the memorial service this evening, and of course also the funeral for Michael Jackson himself. These are the gates outside the Jackson family home. There have been some coming and goings, of course, all day long. It's still, although not the centre of the memorial service, it's still very much the heart of the story, because there's still some speculation that Michael Jackson may, in the end, be interred at his home in Neverland rather than in the other options in the cemeteries and so forth around California. So that's still very much up in the air, and there still has been a great deal of attention. And many of the fans and well-wishers, of course, for Michael Jackson and his family have chosen Neverland as the heart of their mourning and well-wishing, rather than going down to the Staples Centers in Los Angeles, which is very well cordoned off and so forth, and there's not much, frankly, for them to see there. That memorial service, of course, will be at 5:30 tonight starting. There'll be no big screens outside the centre, so there'll be no way for people to gather there and see much. Either they're inside with those tickets, which, of course, Kay Burley's been explaining to us have been so hard to come by, or they will watch it from elsewhere, either on television at home, or perhaps they'll just stay where we can see some people still gathering there with all the tokens and the flowers there on the edges of the entrance to the Neverland Ranch. You're watching Sky News. Coming up in the sport with Nick Powell as England's cricketers gear up for tomorrow's first Ashes test.
Hotter with over 300 made-to-measure blinds, shutters and awnings, all at up to half price. Filter the summer sun with up to half-price Venetians and verticals. Turn up the heat in the style stakes with half-price Knightsbridge shutters, or keep your cool with up to half-price conservatory blinds. So for hot offers on cool styles, let us bring our entire range to you. Call Hillary's now on 0800 916 7796 or visit hillarys.co.uk.
Tesco Car Insurance. You could save up to £160, and Club Card customers who take out a new policy before July 22nd will get a Karcher washer worth £100. Well, it's not often we resort to high-pressure selling, but we'll give it a go. Tesco Car Insurance. Every little helps.
Here at Direct Line Pet Insurance, we hate to be beaten. And we know how expensive it can be if something happens to Rover. So from just £6 per month for cats and from £8 per month for dogs, you can be covered for those costly bills. And you'll save 20% if you buy online.
Plus £1,000 worth of pet food to be won every week. Ooh, better watch out, Mouse.
Whoa! You won't find us on price comparison websites, so...
You're never sure of the best deal until you've come to us direct.
So for cat cover from £6 per month and dog cover from £8 per month...
Plus the chance to win £1,000 worth of pet food.
Call us now or visit directline.com.
Pet food.
This summer, let your imagination soar. Take the whole family to wonderful new worlds any day of the week. Meet amazing characters in our animation season, like Kung Fu Panda. Discover brand new movies a year before any other UK TV channel, all in HD. Get ready for the Sky Movies Great Summer Escape. Add movies for as little as £2 extra a week. Call 08448 244 600 or press red now.
Okay, time to look at the sport now and all the hijinks coming up before this Ashes match starts tomorrow.
What hijinks?
Well, there's people dropping out left, right and centre as far as I can tell.
No, Brett Lee out of the Australian team, which is a bit of a concern for them. But Ricky Ponting, the Australian captain, saying they're not too worried. He'll be back for the second test. Andrew Strauss for England saying that Andrew Flintoff has unfinished business against the Australians. He came through England's final practice before the first Ashes test starts tomorrow in Cardiff, but admitted he is only just back to full fitness. He was the captain when England lost the last series 5-0 in Australia and was disciplined for missing a team bus last week. But Strauss says that's been dealt with and his team as a whole could have the edge this time.
We know what it's like to play Australia. Some of us have played a couple of times, some of us haven't played, but we know the type of cricket you need to play against them. You need to go toe-to-toe, look them in the eye. And I suppose the Australian side, in terms of losing a lot of those big players with a bit of aura about them, the likes of Warner, McGrath and Hayden. Maybe it's not quite as intimidating as it used to be, but we're still expecting some hard cricket. You get that every time you play against Australia. We're going to be ready for that, and we know how to counteract that. Fred settled in brilliantly, which is always a bit tricky coming back in the side. He's been out for a while. He's settled in brilliantly. He's very, very motivated to play well in this series, and it's great to see him with a bit between his teeth. I think he feels it. He's got some unfinished business with the Aussies, and I think he's going to play a very big role for us in the coming weeks.
Well, history is one of the answers that's always given when the players are asked what makes the Ashes series so special. A man who should know what the history is the man who's behind this book, Story of the Ashes, from the Wisden cricketer. Edward Craig joins us live from central London. Good afternoon to you. If I can just read a little bit from page 24 of your book that refers to 1924 and 1925 from the Melbourne Herald of those days, the Australians saying, "It gratifies our national pride, for it's one of our little conceits that cricket is played just a little bit better here than anywhere else in the world." Not much changes then.
No, not much changes. I mean, that piece does go on to say, well played England, and you put up a plucky fight, which I don't think the Aussies are so keen on sharing that sentiment these days. Nothing has changed. The story of the Ashes has been going since 1882. It's a wonderful story that goes through many twists and turns and has mythical openings and great deeds going down through the ages, and we're on the eve of its next chapter.
Great deeds and dastardly deeds as well. Plenty in your book about the famous Bodyline series of the 1930s and all the some of the cables that went forth between the English and Australian authorities. All this about the English bowling tactic, which is essentially to try and make the Australians duck like that to avoid getting out.
Yes, the bodyline tactics were designed to thwart the threat that was Donald Bradman. The bowlers bowled at the body, not at the head, to try and make him uncomfortable. They had very quick bowlers who did this, and the Australians initially accused the English of being unsportsmanlike. The English took umbrage with this and said it's perfectly okay. In that case, we'll cancel this very lucrative tour that we're enjoying in Australia, and basically called the Australians bluff. And that correspondence is published in the book, and it's a great, if slightly embarrassing, example of imperialism.
And of course, if England need any encouragement ahead of this series, they simply turn to the section that deals with the famous Botham Test of 1981.
Yes, I mean, what a wonderful moment that was back in 1981 when Ian Botham won a test match from nothing. I think the series that's most fresh in people's mind, though, is 2005 in this country, which was equally brilliant in its drama and how close and tense the games were. And I think a lot of the players who were involved in these players in this series were involved in that game, and certainly the English can draw great inspiration from that.
Is this the sporting event that is most closely linked between the two nations, England and Australia? It's hard to think of any other two nations that are so linked by one sporting event.
I guess so. I mean, it's one of the first sporting events, but I mean, the rivalry started in 1877, was the first Australia-England Test match, so it's been going for plenty of years, probably ahead of many other sports. And that weight of history, certainly the players feel it. The players will be feeling it this evening and certainly first thing tomorrow morning. And it's what makes it such a tight, enticing contest and makes it so eagerly followed.
So who wins this time?
It's a tight one to call. I think it's going to be a tough series, and I think Australia are going to sneak it by a test match.
Oh, you can't say that. Edward Craig, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
Big rugby story today as well. The England manager Martin Johnson's recalled Johnny Wilkinson to his 32-man elite training squad, but there is no place for Danny Cipriani. Wilkinson, who's joined Toulon in France, hasn't played for England since the 2008 Six Nations, but he's now fully fit again and is one of only two France-based players in the squad. Ricky Flutie is the other. Three further France-based players have been left out: James Haskell, Tom Palmer and Andy Good. Cipriani, who was once hailed as the new Wilkinson, has failed to impress Johnson and his coaching team. The 21-year-old must settle for a place in England's second-string Saxon squad. Well, I was enjoying that conversation with Edward Craig until he said Australia were going to win.
Well, he had to come to it eventually, didn't he, Nick? Good stuff. Thanks very much indeed. You're still watching Afternoon Live. Coming next, Michal in Moscow. Can the First Lady win over the Russians?
To you, Michael is an icon. To us, Michael is family.
Welcome to our super summer savings celebration.
We've got a host of homely offers.
Look out, sausage!
Like 50% off home contents insurance.
And remember, we're not on any price comparison websites.
Thanks, but no thanks.
And we can give you savings.
So you can never be sure of the best deal until you come to us direct. So for 50% off home contents insurance,
buzz off.
Visit directline.com.
Or call us, we'll be here.
In Russia with President Obama visiting. For more on the First Lady now and the role that she plays during official visits, we're joined by Bronwyn Maddox, Chief Foreign Commentator from The Times. Thanks for joining us. It's becoming, I suppose we could say, fashionable for First Ladies and senior wives and so forth to make something of an appearance as well. Is it just window dressing? Surely it's part of a charm offensive that's deemed necessary by the diplomatic advisors.
Well, it's a charm offensive, but I think within that you can call it window dressing. I mean, it doesn't matter if they're not there. The French President, Nicolas Sarkozy, didn't have a wife for some months at least, and Silvio Berlusconi, the Italian Prime Minister, doesn't have one at the moment. She's filing for divorce, and so that might be an embarrassment at tomorrow's G8 meeting in Italy. So it's awkward if they're not there, but yes, it helps to a charm offensive, but you can't, I think, say they play a very formal role.
Well, no, there's no policy being discussed, I suppose, and there's no political brief for any First Lady. But when we look at the Obamas when they came here, of course, the British public lapped it off. Michelle Obama going to a school and talking to girls about the potential for them to seize the day and seize the future and so forth. And that puts the public on side. And if the public is on side, it makes the local politicians mindful that they shouldn't perhaps be as dismissive as otherwise they'd like to be. I mean, let's remember that in Russia, this is not headline news. The Kremlin doesn't want to make a big feast of this new hero, President Obama, showing up, but they're making their presence felt anyway.
I think that's right. You could say that Michelle Obama can soften the edges of what could be a difficult visit. So it's important that she's there. And she did do wonders in London. I think the girls' school talk that she gave, which was very moving, did go down particularly well. And hugging the Queen gave her brownie points back home, at least, where they saw it as a marvellous puncture of what they call stuffy Britishness. So I think she's definitely helped President Obama a lot. But still, it is a very elegant kind of window dressing.
Well, when you say helped President Obama a lot, we all understand that there are things that America needs from Russia. There's the oil and the gas and the fact they've got a huge army and so forth. There's also a potential in the White House to say, well, if Russia doesn't play ball, we can still turn our back on them and deal with other priorities. Now, in that mix, doesn't it help that President Obama makes a favourable impression with whoever he can and his wife makes a favourable impression with whoever she can while they're visiting?
Yes, but I think it's the words from the President that really matter, and I think President Obama has been very clever in the build-up to this, in making it clear to Russia that there's a real deal on the table about reduction of nuclear missiles, but also that Russia isn't such a big problem for America, that Obama couldn't walk away if he wanted to and turn to problems that really matter, if you like.
Indeed. Bronwyn Maddox from The Times, thanks very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
A memorial to the 52 people killed in the July 7th terror attacks in London has been unveiled in Hyde Park to mark the 4th anniversary of the bombings. Prince Charles and Gordon Brown joined survivors and friends and relatives of those who died for the tribute read by Sir Trevor MacDonald.
On this 4th anniversary, we remember the following innocent people who lost their lives on July 7th, 2005. James Adams, Sam Badham and Lee Christopher Harris, Lee Baisden, Phil Baer, Ed Brandt, Michael Stanley Brewster, Kieran Cassidy.
After the victims' names were read out, a minute's silence was then held, which was followed by a laying of wreaths led by the Prince of Wales. And the £1 million monument's made up of 52 stainless steel columns to represent each of those who lost their lives. They're grouped in 4 clusters to mark the 4 locations of the bombings at King's Cross, Aldgate, Edgware Road and Tavistock Square. During his address, the Prince paid tribute to the emergency workers who risked their own lives on that fateful day.
Both my wife and I would like to express now, as then, our deeply held grief and anguish at the appalling aberrations in the human consciousness which produce such cruel and mindless carnage. The families of the victims, the survivors, and the stout-hearted emergency services remain very much in our thoughts and prayers. You are a moving example of holding together bravely in the face of such inhuman and deplorable outrage. And you offer us hope for the future.
Well, later the royal couple met with some of the victims' relatives. Around 700 guests were invited, and some said the occasion would remain a happy memory for them. Well, Sky's Laura Bundock is there in Hyde Park for us. Laura, first of all, we've seen a lot of the ceremony. What about the design of that monument behind you?
Yeah, it's an interesting design, isn't it? And it changes as the light changes. We've had all kinds of weather this morning and this afternoon. In fact, it started pouring with rain almost poignantly as the family members were laying a white rose and a red rose, the red rose for love and the white rose for peace. The design itself made up of these 52 stainless steel columns cast in Sheffield, some 3.5 metres high, and they're arranged into these 4 groups, but interlocking 4 groups, the 4 groups representing those 4 locations of the attacks, but they're all intermingled as well, and the designers tell me that's because they want to reflect the individuality and yet the collective tragedy of what happened here in London 4 years ago. I spoke to the key designer Kevin Carmody and asked him why they decided not to engrave the names of the victims on these 52 columns.
The 52 standing stelae, as you've referred to them, are inscripted with the date, the 7th of July 2005, the time and the place of each of the lives lost. And the names are then, as you say, located on a plaque at the end of the path that we've extended here in Hyde Park. That gives a sense that maybe this could have been anyone, and hopefully portrays that randomness of the loss of life.
Laura Bundock there in Hyde Park. Thanks very much indeed for joining us this afternoon. Still to come on Afternoon Live, why IKEA's had to put the brakes on its global expansion plan.
To be a hero.
Let me put this to you as delicately as I can.
When you're public enemy number 1.
You're Hellboy. Watchmen! Yeah. You're ugly, man. Watchmen!
Ron Perlman. Hellboy 2, The Golden Army starts Saturday on Sky Movies Premiere, Sky Anytime and HD.
Here at Direct Line Pet Insurance, we hate to be beaten.
And we know how expensive it can be if something happens to Rover.
So from just £6 per month for cats and from £8 per month for dogs, you can be covered for those costly bills. And you'll save 20% if you buy online.
Plus £1,000 worth of pet food to be won every week. Ooh, better watch out, Mouse.
Whoa! You won't find us on price comparison websites, so...
You're never sure of the best deal until you've come to us direct.
So for cat cover from £6 per month and dog cover from £8 per month...
Plus the chance to win £1,000 worth of pet food.
Call us now or visit directline.com.
Pet food.
This summer, Sainsbury's will be helping everyone in Britain feed their family fantastic food for just £5. Ain't that right, girls? Yeah! Oh, yes. Like these brilliant pork burgers. This Sainsbury's mince is 100% British and it's also endorsed by Freedom Food. That's it, we've got the breadcrumbs in. Go on, girls, scrunch it up. Fresh salsa, grilled corn, jacket potatoes. Look at that. Proper, tasty food for a £5. To find out where the Tri-Team girls are in action...
When you're needing a number, they never slumber. 118 24/7. It's Directory Allen.
Spend on hold for UK adults. Finances worry millions. Managing our money is now even more important. That's why you should check your Experian credit report. It shows your credit commitments and how you're coping. Take a 30-day trial at creditexpert.co.uk and see your Experian credit report free. And if it needs improving, then there's advice on how to do it. Take control of your finances at creditexpert.co.uk.
You can count on Churchill.
Is that right? Yes. I can count on you for 50% off home insurance if I haven't claimed in 5 years?
Oh, yes.
And UK call centres?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, right. He told me he's been invited to a garden party at the palace.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, no.
For 50% off award-winning home insurance, count on Churchill. Call our UK call centres or go online.
Business news now with Anna.
Andrew, thank you. Good afternoon to you. Coffee Republic has fallen victim to the high street squeeze as the group has called in administrators. The coffee and deli chain has 150 staff, the majority working in its group-owned shops. Now, it also has concessions in cinemas, hotels and retail outlets, and the administrators, KPMG, have warned that job losses are inevitable. Now, hopes that the British economy is starting to climb out of recession have been dampened by an unexpected drop in industrial and manufacturing production. New figures show that output has unexpectedly fallen in May, making it less likely that the economy returned to growth in the second quarter. Some economists had been forecasting a turnaround in fortunes for manufacturers, so disappointing news there. Better news, though, from a leading business group. The worst of the recession is over, but talk of recovery is premature. Now, that's the view of the British Chambers of Commerce, which represents many of the country's small and medium-sized businesses. It says that there's been what it calls welcome progress in confidence levels, but does say that sales and orders and employment levels do still remain weak.
What we saw in mid-2008 was really a dramatic decline in confidence in order books that have fell all the way through to the end of the first quarter of this year. But now we're seeing, I think, quite a marked turnaround. Companies believe that we've reached the bottom. It's not going to get any worse. And hopefully now we're starting to climb out of this.
Now, in other news, a former computer programmer at Goldman Sachs has been released on bail after being charged with the theft of trade secrets. Now, the FBI made the arrest on Friday. Sergei Aleynikov is accused of stealing sensitive trading codes. Here, the government has underestimated the value of the post office as a link with citizens. That's according to a group of MPs who also criticised government departments for their response to an inquiry aimed at saving post offices. The committee chairman said there was no reason why the network couldn't flourish again in the future. Now, the founder of IKEA says the furniture retailer needs to cut more jobs as demand continues to fall below expectations. IKEA has already cut 5,000 staff. It's also scaling back its global expansion programme. Essentially, the home furnishings industry is heavily dependent on the number of people moving house or remortgaging, and so it's been suffering of late. Let's take a quick look finally at the markets. London FTSE not having too bad a day of it today. It's up just under 0.5% at the moment. And that's all your business news. Andrew, back to you.
Anna, thanks very much indeed. You're watching Sky News. Take a look at our website, skynews.com, and you'll see Pay Your Respects to the King of Pop on our tribute wall. And coming up, Shaheen joining music legends, singing for Michael Jackson. We'll be live to Swansea next. We're live to Swansea now. Here are the school children.